Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the office. Today, I want to talk to you about a couple of things. I am going to be posting for you your next quiz. I also promised that I would put up the requirements or an outline or format for you for your speech analyses, and I have not, no one has said it's there, and so I'm suspicious that it's not there. And I'm really suspicious because I put it into a different place and linked it over, and I'm not sure if that worked. So what I'm going to do is actually recopy it and basically by hand for me. And then I'm going to put it up in an announcement, and hopefully that will help. And you guys won't have any problem finding it. And my computer will actually send it to you instead of ignoring you and not letting you see your assignment. So that will be going up tonight without question. The quiz will go up possibly tonight, more likely tomorrow, or at the latest by Wednesday. And as always, you will have a week to take that quiz. So, and as always, it's open note, open book, no time limit. All right. So those are the two important things to get out of the way. Now let's talk about what you've been reading for the past couple weeks. We left off with, I believe last time, fear appeals, and also the way that we utilize fear appeals in a speech that is constructed for the point of persuasion. So when we're trying to get people to change their minds, to change their behavior, to change their actions, or so on, or we're trying to encourage them to take specific actions or start thinking a different way, what we're doing is we're attempting to motivate them to act, right? And I don't know about you, but my parents, they had a very distinct way of motivating me. Their idea of persuasion was because I said so, which I think a lot of us have that. And I never understood that until I became a parent myself. But it's interesting. I've been in a complete argument with my 12-year-old about why you should shower more than once every other day. And she keeps telling me her skin's going to dry out. And I keep telling her that is not true. And so I would rather she shower every day because she's 12. And if you have never smelled a teenager before, you'll have no idea what I'm referencing here. But I'll tell you what doesn't work on my stepdaughter is because I said so, which is truly problematic for any, I think, parent who is co-parenting or is just, the way I describe being a bonus mom, which is what we call it, is I stand there and watch everything happen, but then I have to take responsibility for it when it does. So I can see things going off the rails. I can see when Leah's about to get upset. I can tell you what her triggers are, but nobody gives a crap about what I think, right? Now, my husband's actually very good. What he does is he just says, everything's up to you. And I've been in Leah's life since she was 3. So she has a little bit more of attention to me as an authority figure, but she doesn't have what she would get from her father. So sometimes I have to say, hey, you got to go talk to her. She doesn't care what I say. And I know that's hard to believe, but it's a very fine distinction. And one of the reasons is probably the greatest fear appeal that you can use is you don't want to disappoint people. Okay. And we used to talk about this when I was in my grad classes. We would talk about how we need a class to like us. I don't want to be your mom. I don't necessarily want to be your friend and hang out. I don't want any of those things. And I don't want you to fear me. And respect is something that's earned, not just given. So what is it I do want when I walk into a room or get online and say, I am Professor Dudash-Buskirk or Dr. Dudash-Buskirk? What is it that I'm looking for? And the answer is not fear or intimidation or elitism. It's, I want you to not want to disappoint me, right? In the same way that I don't want to disappoint you. I don't want to let you down. You don't want to let me down. Now, that is not the same as a fear appeal. If I say to you, hey, you know what? If you want to get an A in this class, here's what you need to do. That is not an intent to scare. That is not even remotely close to what we would normally call a fear appeal. Okay. Now, fear appeals are not the same as coercion. You'll notice that the last Blackboard discussion we had was, is all propaganda political? Because I was really looking for other propaganda that was not necessarily tied to a political campaign. And I thought for sure someone would mention it, but no one did. And that's Disney. Disney permeates a lot of our world and makes decisions for us that we don't even realize they're making. A prime example of this is when they acquired Marvel, and all of a sudden things changed drastically, not just to Marvel, but also to my Disney Plus subscription. I now have to have a passcode to watch the movies I want to watch because some of them are a little, not good for children, right? Like Deadpool as an example. So they permeate us. They are everywhere. You cannot escape Disney no matter how much you want to. And I told somebody the other day that probably the only thing I could think of that is not like impacted by a Disney-esque reference or metaphor is Dungeons and Dragons, which I'm seriously waiting for Disney to take over too, which is basically just tabletop World of Warcraft. If you ever played that, I don't know. I don't know what the cool kids do anymore. I'm not even saying D&D is cool. It was cool in my day, but my husband plays it. So therefore I say it's cool. Because of course it is. He's playing it. Good deal. But I don't see a lot of people recognizing anything other than political speech as propaganda. And that was a really interesting discussion on that board. And I just want to tell you, thank you. I was entertained. And also, you all are very intelligent people, which is fantastic. I love your reasoning because sometimes you'll write something and I'll be like, no. And then I read your explanation, which is what we're supposed to do. But, I don't want to say this day and age, but the truth is that that we don't listen all that much. And the key to understanding an argument or a persuasive message is to listen. And so I'll read it and I'll get like halfway through it and go, oh, yeah, okay, I see that. That makes sense to me now. So you all make me think, and I just want to tell you I appreciate that in our discussions. So fear appeals are not coercion. Okay, this is not something where I'm literally threatening your life, your physical being, or your well-being, or your family's well-being, or your property. I'm not threatening anything, right? That would be coercion. Fear is a different type of appeal, and it's actually a persuasive appeal that people claim is okay to use. I don't happen to think it's very ethical to use fear as an appeal. Why do we call it an appeal? Well, I'm trying to motivate somebody to change or to do something, right? Or to stop doing something. I was a smoker for many, many years. I know all the arguments as to why you should not smoke, and I still smoked. I quit in 2009, don't worry. But that the whole time I was a smoker, I was also dealing with you're going to die. You're stunting your growth. I'm only 5'4". Of course, my growth is stunted. I'm short. You will get lung cancer. There's no doubt about it. You will get COPD. I mean, you name it. I was told it because any smoker will tell you get those arguments. I imagine all vapors get that argument as well. So, or people who might smoke marijuana or even use it in pill form. I mean, you get criticisms for all these things, and people try to appeal to what's scary about them. And normally what's scary about them is what is unknown, right? What is the unknown? And how you feel. Why you smoke. Why you do things that might be potentially harmful to you someday in a different world. All that. They don't. And what's even better is because they don't, they think they need to let you know. So I always find it funny when people would criticize me for smoking who are they were never smokers. As a former smoker, I can tell you that every single day I still wake up, 2009, remember July of 2009, I quit. Every morning I wake up, I still want a cigarette. I saw, in your book, I looked at the picture of the young girl who was smoking a cigarette, and I was like, oh God, yeah, I want a cigarette. Really. It was almost like the opposite, right? I wanted a cigarette at that point in time. And of course I didn't smoke one. I'm just saying that, when you tap into people's fears, you're either tapping into the unknown for them, or you're tapping into a fear appeal that's actually going to motivate them to keep doing what they're doing. You show me pictures of people smoking, and I'm like, yeah, looks good. You show me the commercials. That's where I'm getting to. Those fear-inducing commercials. There is not a threat, so they're not coercion to your life, your well-being, your material goods, etc. There's not that. So what is it when they show you these pictures of people who can barely walk, who can't talk, who are missing the bottom half of their mouth, or have a voice box put in, or, take your pick, a trachea with the stoma for talking. All of those things are scary. I don't want to see anybody in that condition. Here's what else I know. I watched 4 grandparents smoke. I watched my cousins, they still smoke. My cousin who had cancer still smokes. Yeah, that's right. She had cancer and now she still smokes. I know a college professor at Carnegie Mellon who survived non-Hodgkin's lymphoma and still smokes. These are intelligent people. These are not dumb people at all. And what is it that they've done? Well, they've weighed sort of that, what's the risk of that happening to me versus my enjoyment right now. Those commercials, I always change the channel if they come on. I haven't seen any in a while because I've been mainly streaming things, but I can't watch them. And it's not because I'm afraid it's going to happen to me. It's because I have 4 grandparents who smoked. One of them died at the age of 61. One of them died at 83, but had been suffering for 30 years from a very, very bad stroke. And I don't want to live that way either. The other one died at 76. And another one died at 99. So they all smoked. My grandfather's worked in really bad places for you. One was in a steel mill. The other one was in a sort of a recycling metal scrapyard kind of thing, where he worked on all the machines. And he might have been deaf when he died, but even though he smoked from the time he was 14 until he was 65, he never had so much as a hip replacement. So my point is that it's not commensurate with my experiences. And whenever you're appealing to someone to change something specific about themselves, you have to keep in mind that they are bringing all of their experiences beforehand to that presentation. So when you give me an argument, I bring everything I know I've experienced to that. Which is why fear appeals are always so general, right? They're always general because they have to be. We're appealing to the unknown. We're appealing to what we think might possibly happen. There's a percentage. I was watching, what was I watching the other night? Civil War. I'm a Marvel fan, just in case you didn't know that. I was watching, Captain America Civil War. And at one point, they were talking about fear and power and the relationship between those things. But the biggest point was, did you have a choice? If you had a choice, then that means that the argument is not unethical. Okay. Right, sure. I'm going to disagree with that, okay? Because here's the thing. We use fear when we've got nothing left in our arsenal. Aristotle said there are 3 appeals that you need in a persuasive presentation in order to be successful? 3. None of them are fear. They are appeal to logos, which is, yes, both logic and language, appeal to ethical character and goodwill, and appeal to pathos, emotions, yes. He's very clear that fear as an emotion is not proper for a persuasive speech. And the reason it's not proper is because it says, I don't have any better argument than to scare the crap out of you. That's a really base argument. And some people would say that borders on coercion. I'm going to say that it's not the same as coercion, but it is an appeal that isn't really the best argument you can make. So when your book talks about fear appeals, I want you to think about whether or not there's an ethical way to utilize fear appeals. That's a tough question, but I'm going to put it up on the discussion board. I just kind of want to hear your thoughts. You all give extremely interesting and wonderful answers, as I said, so I want to know what your thoughts are. Is there a way to use fear as an appeal when you're trying to persuade? That's the simple question. And of course, that fear, as your book leads us into the next chapter, chapter 13, which I believe it's chapter 13, yes, which we are still on schedule, by the way, which is fantastic. I love that. But as we it leads into chapter 13. And you might be thinking to yourself, how do fear appeals lead into chapter 13, which is about cognitive dissonance theory? And that's easy. The truth of the matter is that I just gave you several examples, do things against our own interests, or we do things against what we think our interests are, or what other people have told us our interests are. I don't know about you, but I do stuff against my best interest on a regular basis. Now, I won't let Leah do anything against her best interest, like being a bonus mom. No, nothing's happening on my watch, girlie. And more importantly, just like I said in the beginning of this, my parents say, because I said so, because there's no other answer left. We've been through it. We understand. Leah telling me I can't shower today because I just showered the day before yesterday and my skin's going to dry out. This was my response. Oh my God. And then I closed her door gently, didn't slam it, and just walked away. And I said to her father, I said, I can't deal with that. You're going to have to deal with that. And of course, she ended up taking a shower because she overheard me say to Jason, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I can't deal. And so she just came out of her bedroom and took a shower. And I was glad for that. But she will argue about anything. And what's amazing is that she's trying to change my perception of reality when I'm there in that reality with her. So, for example, besides the shower thing, I said to her, she got up. She doesn't get up till like noon because, what teenager gets up on a reasonable hour anyway? But she gets up and she's sort of like slumping through. She comes out, she goes in the bathroom, she comes back out of the bathroom, she looks at me and I said, what? She goes, I guess I'm awake. And I said, well, it's only 11:30. So do you need to go back to bed? She goes, no. And I said, you should probably eat something. And she said, I'm not hungry. I said, okay. So she came and she sat down and she looked at me and she goes, can we watch Psych? Because that's what we've been watching lately. She wanted a mystery and I had to find an appropriate one. So I said, yeah, we could watch Psych. So we sit down. She's watching Psych. Her father's on his phone. I go in and take a shower. I come back out. She is still in the same exact position. Her friend is coming over at 2. It's now 1. And I said, Leah, for the love of God, would you go brush your hair? And she goes, I did. And I went, when? And she goes, I did earlier. I said, you're sitting in the same position you've been in all night, all morning. She goes, yeah. I said, I saw you. When did you brush your hair? And literally her hair she looks like a matted dog, just like hair mats everywhere. And she goes, no, I did. And I sort of went, okay. And her father looked at me and I was like, it's a little questionable. She stands up. She's still in her pajamas. So I don't know. Maybe she thought I should go brush my hair, but I'm going to stay in my pajamas. There's no logic there. And when it comes to children of that age, and I mean, all the way up, my son's 20, he'll still do this, say the most illogical things. They make no sense. What are you talking about? And one day you'll see that, I'm sure, with younger children in your life or peripheral to your life. It doesn't matter. You're going to see it where they have an argument with their parents and you're just like, what the hell? Why are they arguing about this? And if you think about it, obviously I wouldn't say go brush your hair if your hair didn't need to be brushed, which I think is like the more important lesson there. But there's no more, you're stepmom, so I better listen to what you say. That's gone. Those days are gone. They're gone. I can't appeal to the unknown as much as I have been able to because she's smarter now. And even though she's completely illogical, she's gaining knowledge as she goes. She's gaining experience, but she hasn't gained how to reason those things out just yet. So we sort of have to help her with that. And that's true of all kids who are really between the ages of like 10 and 17. It's this, based on my experience with 9 nibblings and 3 siblings and, my kids, of which there are my son and then 2 stepdaughters, 3 grandchildren. Believe me, they're all pretty much the same, like this age group. So what are we trying to achieve then? When we're older, are we just more experienced and automatically get some logic? No, not really. Reasoning is something that has to be practiced in order to be honed. And that's something that you learn as you're in college, but that people in the real world will tell you isn't important. I don't need you to give me a lesson in reasoning. I know how to reason. I'm logical. Okay, great. But your argument is not. So it's really important if we're going to be good critical thinkers in understanding when we're being persuaded and whether or not it's a good ethical way to persuade us and whether or not it's going to be effective. We have to first know how to critically analyze those messages. So people who use fear are using it to get a quick response. It's a shortcut a lot of the times. It's an extreme. And it sort of says to me, when somebody tries to use fear against me, it's saying, I don't have a better argument, so I'm just going to scare you, whatever way that is. Which my husband has taught me a very good response to when people do that to me. Because we've had people say to us, if you try and take Leah for visitation, we're going to take you to court. And I used to get really upset by this. I always wanted to do things exactly right because I'm not counted by the court. And so my husband has taught me that the best response to this is, okay. And if you want to know how serious he is about that response, try this on for size. When in 2014, we had, it was myself and my stepdaughter Jo and her kid and my son and my husband, and it was 7:00 in the morning on a Tuesday, and we're getting ready for our various work, school, etc. And we get a phone call from Leah's mom saying, hey, I understand that Elizabeth's been staying at your house. And Jason's like, yeah, of course she has. You knew that. Chris stays at your house. And she goes, well, I am going to go to the lawyer today and tell them that I'm invoking a domesticity clause because Elizabeth's staying there. And until Elizabeth leaves. And he goes, well, why all of a sudden? Like, what's this have to do? Because I had been staying there for weeks at this point, months. And she said, well, I understand that Jo is over there visiting, Joanna. And I said, yeah, of course. Jason's like, yeah, that's my daughter. That's Leah's sister. Nope, she's really not. So I'm going to the court and I'm going to tell them that you don't get visitation this weekend because Joe is there. And he goes, that's never going to work. You can't go to the court and say, hey, my one daughter is there with his daughter. I don't want that. That doesn't work. That's not going to work in court. And she goes, well, I mean, I don't know what you think you're going to do, because if you're not married to Elizabeth, I can invoke the domesticity clause. And he went, okay. And she said, okay, kind of confused, which I would be too. He goes, yeah, okay. And she goes, well, I guess I'll talk to you later, and hung up the phone. There was dead silence after that, because I think we were all afraid that Jason was just going to go, okay. But no, me being the talkative person that I am, had to turn and say, we're getting married today, aren't we? And he said, we're damn well going to try. And that was I ended up in a courthouse at 11 o'clock in the morning in Arkansas, getting married. My point there is this. Whenever you say to someone, whenever you respond to a fear appeal, especially with okay, and you don't elaborate, or you don't allow them to elaborate, that stops everything. And then all of a sudden, the next step is unknown, because they don't know why you just responded with okay. I mean, if you think about it, what does that really mean? Okay. It doesn't mean I agree. It doesn't mean sure. It doesn't mean anything remotely close to that. It just means I heard you, and nothing beyond that. And of course, they both worked at the same place at the time, so he got to go in after his lunch hour and go around. He showed his ring to one person, and he said, the Walmart, I don't know what you want to call it, the Walmart gossip system started immediately, and the whole store knew before the end of before I left. And the point is that, how they say, don't ask a question you don't know the answer to, or don't want the answer to. That's true when you're making a fear appeal as well. You don't know what that response is going to be. Is it going to get them to start smoking more? Or like me, or is it going to get them to research all of the negative effects of cigarettes and it's not going to work. Fear appeals, believe it or not, don't actually work. So you'll read about fear appeals for an entire chapter, but I think that sums it up pretty well, which, as I said, leads us into cognitive dissonance. And the question is how? How does that lead to cognitive dissonance? Well, in reading your book, a chapter about cognitive dissonance, which I imagine you're doing now, you may not have read it, and that's okay. You're going to find a couple of things. The first thing you're going to find is a definition of what cognitive dissonance theory is. And a lot of people say it's when you hold two different things together and you're not sure what to do. Or when you violate your own standards and you don't know what to do. Or probably the best example is when somebody of authority asks you to do something that you know is unethical. You sort of go, okay, I don't want to do an unethical thing, but this person's in authority over me. What do I do? I'm sort of stuck. I'm sort of trapped in between these two things, and I have to make a choice, and I have to make it quickly. So it's cognitive dissonance can be sort of thrown around. I mean, I think a lot of people do that all the time. They're like, well, I'm experiencing a lot of cognitive dissonance right now. And I'm like, how is right now a period of cognitive dissonance for you? Because we like to use that term in a way that we think we understand, which is sort of a flippant, we've got two ideas going on and it's so hard to make a choice. It's not about that. It's about bigger things than just that. All right. And that's how it links to fear. So let's talk about what cognitive dissonance is. Well, first of all, cognitive dissonance is really another theory. Now, we talked about ELM. We've talked about sort of the traditional oral critique, speech analysis for effective or for whether it's a good speech or bad speech, evaluating the persuasion. You read about the other elaboration model, which is an elaboration on the two kinds of fear that's in chapter 12. So you've gotten a lot of these sort of, I don't know if it's models or theories or what they want to call them. You can actually use these and apply them in a multitude of ways. So the first thing we need to know is, what is dissonance? Well, cognitive obviously means thinking. So it's in the brain. It is in fact physiological. It is psychological. I like how this is what your book says. I'm going to read this because it blew my mind. Dissonance is psychologically uncomfortable and physiologically, even neurologically, arousing, stimulating the posterior medial frontal cortex as well as the anterior cingulate cortex, a region of the brain that is activated by conflicts involving behavior and core values. Okay, thank you, Bones. If any of you watch that television show, I don't, what's that? Sort of a thing. Now, I can break that down and understand it, and I'm sure you could too. But what is it in here that's important? And the answer is this. It is that last sentence that says, when there is a conflict, it's activated by conflicts involving behavior and core values. All right. Why is that important? Because it's not, oh my God, do I want to eat chocolate and gain weight, or do I want to try to fit in my jeans tonight? That's not cognitive dissonance. That's a choice, right? There's not cognitive dissonance when you're in a position that doesn't affect the core values of who you are. So in my example, I was talking about ethics. It's important to me to make ethical choices when it comes to, especially my career. So that is, I'd probably be unethical for my kids to protect them or whatever. Sure, who wouldn't? But when it comes to my job, I believe that ethics are sort of at the top of the line here, because we deal in what a lot of people think is a bunch of lies and empty language. That's what communication scholars deal with, right? So dissonance is when there's a conflict between who you are and what you're doing. Okay? That's pretty deep. This is not just a sort of light, I am confused thing. This is literally, I have to do something that will violate my very core values. All right. Dissonance occurs in a couple of times. One, it can occur when people hold two clearly incongruent thoughts, but they're about your core values. Not conflicting thoughts about what cookie to have. Not conflicting thoughts about, did I study enough for an exam? That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about two incongruent ideas that are at the very core of who you are. Those beliefs that you hold that are so hard for us to change. All right. Second, when you make a decision that rules out a desirable alternative. This is where the kids come in. Every single time, you give them the hard way and the easy way, and 100% of the time they pick the hard way. And I don't ever know why. It's like, you could just do this and be done, or you can drag it out forever. They will drag it out. And it's not to their benefit or anybody else's benefit. They just decided that's what they need to do. And they get sort of trapped into, okay, I made this decision, so this is how I'm going to do it. And because they didn't do the easy way, they maybe are going to miss out on something else. And then they're like, well, you told me I had to do this. And they'll find a way to blame it on the source, definitely. But in the end, it's really about teaching them that the hard way is sometimes the faster way. That the easy way out is not always the best way out. A third example is when you expend effort to participate in what turns out to be a less than ideal activity. I hate this. I hate this so much. So you guys, when I'm on campus, I would hold office hours and I would sit there for 3 hours, uncomfortable, wanting to eat, whatever, and no one would show up. So let me get this right. I got up out of bed. I took a shower. I got dressed. I ate breakfast or whatever, lunch, whatever's at that time. I drove 12 miles from my house to my office. And nobody who said that they wanted to see me for office hours showed up. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean like if you didn't say, Dr. Dash, I need to see you, and you didn't come, that that's a problem. No, I mean, that's fine. But I'm talking about people who've actually made appointments, and I drive all the way up from Nixa, and I get there, and they don't show. Worst outcome possible. It's a really difficult place to be when you have decided to do something that where you have to expend some energy and some effort, make a real effort to do it, and it turns out poorly. You might never do that thing again because you're just afraid it's going to turn out poorly. Obviously, I still hold office hours. That's not a question. Finally, in general, you're unable to find a sufficient psychological justification for an attitude or behavior. Irrationally angry, right? Literally means when you can't find a reason for that. People who cry and don't know why they're crying. I get mad sometimes. I don't even know what I'm mad at, right? What's important is recognizing that at the time. But in general, we sometimes feel things or have an attitude or a behavior and do things even though there's no justification for it externally or internally. I'm going to go and I'm going to drive my car 100 miles an hour down I-65. Why? Just for kicks. That's dangerous. You could get a ticket. It could literally cost you money, a car, your body, your life. I mean, that is not a smart idea. Or you could hurt someone else, right? Yeah, but I just want to do it. There's no justification in there at all whatsoever. None that can be at least verbalized. And that is truly a dissonance, because generally speaking, the person who's making that choice doesn't know why they're doing it either. I've got a godson who is the pure walking definition of this form of cognitive dissonance. All right, the third part of the definition is that dissonance is set in motion once the individual performs a behavior and then has to rationalize that behavior. So I'm sure you've done this. I know I have many times in my life where I did something and it was a mistake. I shouldn't have done it. And so I need to find a cover story, not a lie, but a reason for why it was done. And, when you're an adult, they don't accept, I don't know, as an answer anymore, right? I don't know if my parents ever accepted I don't know as an answer either, but my dad was always telling me I had to have a reason for why I was doing whatever it was that I was doing. Who knows what it was at the time. Why I was riding my bike until 9 o'clock at night when I was supposed to be home before the street lights were on. I don't know. I just felt like it. But it violates all the rules. Yeah. Well, then you shouldn't do it. Understood. So why'd you do it? I don't know. That does not sell in sort of the adult world of logical thinking, right? And so when we're persuading people, we can't put them in that position, right? Because it won't work. The magnitude of dissonance depends on many factors, including the number of dissonant elements and the importance of the issue. Now, that's a very complex way of saying cognitive dissonance isn't so bad when you're talking about something that doesn't affect a whole lot, either in time, space, yourself, a bunch of people, or whatever. But there are many factors that can impact whether or not your decision is going to cause a lot of cognitive dissonance or just a little tiny bit. Okay. And I'll actually let you read the book on that because I could sit here and talk about them all day. It won't matter. All right. Number 5, people are motivated to take steps to reduce dissonance, including changing their attitude in response to a persuasive message. Okay. The biggest one here that I can think of that I get all the time, I get asked this all the time. Dr. Judash, I've always identified as a Republican, but I truly believe that fill in the blank. And I say, okay, that's fine. And they're like, but I'm a Republican. And I'm like, yes. And they're like, well, am I still a Republican if I'm holding this, more liberal belief? And I'm like, yeah, if you vote Republican, you're still a Republican. Republican is not a state of humanity. You don't, and certainly none of us are on one side or the other of anything that's binary. We're not on one side or the other. Um, you know, People ask me what I am when it comes to politics. It's like I was raised in, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania with a father who worshiped John F. Kennedy. I'm pretty sure you could figure out that I'm a pro-union, Kennedy Democrat, which, by the way, means I'm a conservative Democrat. But people don't want to hear that because that doesn't make sense to them. They cannot put conservative ideas with a Democrat. That doesn't work for them. And so when young people come to me and they say, I'm a Republican, Democrat, whatever, but I'm holding this belief, I'm like, okay. But they can't explain to themselves how that works. But once they're given permission that, hey, it's okay to agree with something from the other side every now and then, that's not going to make you not what you are or not who you are. But what if something did? What if, the example of the sorority in the book is very, very good. That might be one that I would point to. I've seen people do things that are just dumb and then afterwards realize they have to change their attitude about what, that thing is. Here's a good example, I think. Medicinal marijuana became available here in Missouri. And due to my use of chemotherapy and a lot of other things, I have been given permission, which I think pretty much everybody gets permission, but it's supposed to help with a number of things. And I have someone who I know who grows it and she can mix it and she has the license for all that. And I'm doing everything above board. So I go back to Pennsylvania to visit my family, and my mother is just mortified that I would even think to bring drugs into her house. And I said, Mom, I have pain medications that are over the counter. I have something like 22 prescriptions that I take. And marijuana is like way down there. Cannabis is way down there on the list of dangerous, pills that I have and drugs that I have. And I was like, you carry Tylenol, ibuprofen, you have a prescription for your blood pressure. What are you talking about? It's just another drug. But because for her, the way she was raised was marijuana, it leads to the use of everything else, right? Every other possible drug that there is. It's like, okay, I'm not going to take a marijuana pill, a cannabis pill. It's cannabis oil, mixed with like coconut oil. I'm not going to swallow it and go, oh man, I totally need to go get me some heroin. Like, it's not how it works. It's not how the body works. She is so obsessed with the idea of the legality that she just doesn't know what to do. Oh my God, I left my daughter in my house and she has cannabis. How am I going to live with that? That's serious cognitive dissonance for her. She's gotten over it. But, what I had to do was I had to change her attitude towards medicinal cannabis. And believe me, that was not easy. And I'm not sure I did it, but I have gotten her to a point where she can now accept that when I come to visit, I have it on me. And in Pennsylvania, it's not legal. So I'm sure that somebody could totally open my bag and go, you have cannabis in here. And I'd be like, yeah. Good news. It's legal where I'm from. And here's my card that says I can carry it. They'll probably confiscate it, but that's probably about it. And so my mom's like, aren't you worried? I was like, yeah, I'm worried the state trooper that's driving down the highway is going to smell my marijuana pills from 3 miles away and come and dig through my, there's just this block she had, right? She couldn't get past it's a drug. And yet her daughter was bringing it into her house. So I was going way beyond. I was going a step beyond what she was able to handle. So instead of me changing, she had to change her attitude about it. And that's a big attitude change, you know? And when we do that, that's also a type of dissonance, okay? In order for dissonance to lead to an attitude change like that, a major attitude change like that, the individual must have freely decided to perform the advocated behavior. Okay, so in other words, what it's saying is that, you know, I created this dissonance for my mom. I knew I was going to do that when I got there, because she had told me, I don't want marijuana in my house. I don't want, you know, and I had to show her how different it was. And once I did that, she came to it on her own of, okay, yeah, I get why you do what you do. You know, you have someone who tells you what to take and you know where it's grown and, you know, all that stuff. Yes, yes, yes. So, you know, I can't force her to change. I didn't force her to change. I didn't give her an ultimatum and say, I'm not going to visit unless I'm allowed to bring these with me. That's silly. But she also didn't say, you can't come to visit if you bring those with you. So she was the one who had to deal with the cognitive dissonance once I got there. And also, believe it or not, all of the cognitive dissonance that we have will not always be resolved. We're going to walk around with competing ideas in our head a lot, and that's okay. The question is, these 7 elements that, you know, sort of are aspects of cognitive dissonance theory, of cognitive dissonance itself, those sort of tell us how we can use it in persuasion. What I want to do is convince my mom that medicinal marijuana or cannabis is okay. I have a lot of things to overcome in order to do that. So what do? I know one of the problems is that she's never had an experience with it. And I don't mean taking it. I mean just seeing it, just knowing it's a pill that I'm not going to like light up, you know, like stoners on television from 1970. That's not the way it's going to do. I have to do a lot of things to change her mind. But I could probably tell you that she still has some dissonance about it. She's still kind of like, I don't want to admit that to people. I don't want to tell people that, you know. Heck, I'm lucky she tells people I exist sometimes, but she definitely doesn't want to tell them some of my more, what my mom would call, overly liberal ideas, I guess, because to her, you know, my ideas or my siblings' ideas are just crazy. Well, to me, my daughter's ideas are crazy. So, you know, as we have these experiences, we might have to live with a little bit of cognitive dissonance. And sometimes in order to persuade, we have to trigger that. So I needed to make my mom have cognitive dissonance in order to succeed in persuading her. This can be true almost all the time. All right. Because people always are going back and forth about what, like who they are and what they're doing. Always go, like, we were talking about, something, a dead tooth I have, right up front. So, you know, obviously when I smile, not the dead, not the gone tooth. I'm still getting, that's coming in pretty soon. I'm glad to hear. But I have a stained tooth essentially, and it's stained from the inside. At some point it got damaged when I was young, and it has been dark ever since. So it's sort of like a darkish grayish brown, and it's just a little bit off from my other teeth. And we've been talking about getting it fixed. And I said, okay, I'm 47 years old. If I look in the mirror without that there, I'm not going to know who I am. Now, of course, that's a ridiculous statement. Of course you do. But what it is it tells you, you know, I've spent so much time being this way that the thought of getting rid of it gives me a little bit of cognitive dissonance. Is this going to be something that redefines who I am? The answer is probably no, because I'm still missing a tooth and I still have to, you know, my teeth are terrible. For those of you with really good genes who got great teeth, good for you. Some of us aren't that way. My husband like goes in for a cleaning and that's it. You know, me, I'm like, oh, how many cavities do I have today? It's terrible. But the idea of having a perfectly straight white smile is really important to some people, and it makes them feel really good about who they are, and that's great. But when you live with not perfect teeth, you get used to seeing that. It becomes a part of your story. It becomes a part of your character, and therefore it becomes a part of the way you think about things. And so when the dentist was trying to convince me to go ahead and bleach that tooth internally, I was like, I don't know. He's like, why wouldn't you want to? I was like, because I've had it my whole life, you know? So cognitive dissonance theory, the reason I went through all of that is because you can read about how it applies in a bunch of different contexts in the chapter 13, which is a very good description of cognitive dissonance. But I wanted to first make sure you understood that as you go into this reading, or if you've done it already, or if you haven't started it yet, I want you to understand that this is not about just, I can't decide what ice cream flavor to have. This has to go to the very core of who people are and go way down deep into their beliefs. And as you know, those are the hardest things to change about people. I think it's beliefs. Is it attitudes? They flipped it. Like some point in my career, it got flipped. So I hope I'm saying it correctly still. So what I want you to do is read that chapter and read it closely, because cognitive dissonance theory is something that we refer to a lot. People use the words all the time. And you want to make sure that, if you're going to apply it, like say to one of your speech analyses, if you're going to use cognitive dissonance theory as a way to look at the persuasive elements of a speech, or of a mostly like marketing ads really have a lot of it. I want you to understand that it's really important that it be core values, not just how people are feeling. All right. So I don't know about you, but I've got your book on my phone and on my iPad and on my computer, and I don't have a paper book, which really drives me crazy. I'm not sure how I feel about doing just Kindle books, but I will say that looks like a really long chapter to me. So take your time with it, because we are on schedule. I don't want you to worry. We still have about 6 weeks until the end of the semester. I know it sounds like only 6 weeks, or is it? Oh God, it's 6 weeks. So what I want you all to understand as well is that because I'm teaching from home, because we have asynchronous communication, I can spend a lot more time on some things. For example, one of the things I don't do is set super hardcore deadlines. And one of the reasons why I do that is because I'm so far away from campus. When I'm on campus and I was teaching full-time on campus, I had deadlines and they stuck, right? I mean, just period, end of story. You didn't turn it in, you get a 0. That's that. These days, I'm a lot more lax because of the sort of environment that we live in. So do not let any portion of this class put you into a position where you're freaked out, where you can't do anything, where you're too stressed. Just all you have to do is call me, or text me, or email me. And then if I don't respond, text me so that I'll email you. 2 of you have actually done that. And I just want to tell you that as much apologizing at you as you have done, do not apologize. It's okay. My job is to answer you. And as we talked about at the beginning of the semester, I don't always get my email, which is really frustrating. But we've been doing pretty well, I think, I hope. If I'm missing anything, by all means, let me know. So this is a really long discussion of fear, of core values, how that plays into cognitive dissonance. And the biggest question is how that plays into persuasion. And the simple answer is, what are you going to appeal to? Or what is this thing that I'm receiving, these messages I'm receiving? What are they trying to appeal to? Were they trying to make me think? Were they trying to make me do? Okay. All right. I will be in touch again later this week. Meanwhile, keep reading. Let me know if you have any questions. Look for that quiz to pop up, and I'll talk to you all soon.